Today, my guest is Mitchell from the band Pipe Bomb and Church Girls. So, hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, dude. You, I don't even remember. I usually kind of start out with how I came in contact with you or heard about the band, and I don't remember. I think it was like someone was promoting Pipe Bomb, and then I'm just like, oh, you might like this, or it's someone we know in some sort of circle, and it's like, oh, okay, let's look forward to this thing. And I have to admit, the visual for what was the first one, False God, right? It was
hmm
very had very creepy for me. I
hmm
it's not like creepy, but it had a very creepy feel, like the big like the what's the Norma Jean album that has Bless the Martyr? Is it Bless the Martyr, right?
Yeah, that's the album. Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of that because it's got a creepy feel to it, and this had a very creepy feel to it as far as the look of it, in my opinion. And so that already had me engaged. So then when the song finally came out, I was really curious of what you had to say, and boy, was that brutal. One of the lines that hit me was the "In hell there are no subtleties, just bastards and trophies." I was like, "Oh dang, someone's hitting the truth here." So I know we'll get into it a little bit, but where did you come up with the idea for Pipe Bomb? Because you are in a group called Church Girls. So
Yeah.
how did that come to be?
Yeah. So I think actually before it was called Pipe Bomb, I kind of had the idea to start a two-man project. So my brother plays drums, and we used to play shows like back in the day. We were in a Christian metalcore band called Despite My Pride in like southern New Jersey.
Oh wow.
Um, and so initially it was called Barabbas, um, which actually Meadows just had a song called Barabbas, which is
Yes,
kind of a funny coincidence. But
true.
but yeah, so it started out with that kind of idea of like, oh, if I play um, like guitar, bass, and vocals, and then he does the drums, we were like, oh, we can just do it with the two of us. We can record some stuff for fun and just see where it goes.
Mhm.
And I still have those demos, and they may eventually become pipe bomb demos, but they were a lot more I wouldn't say like power violence, but definitely inspired by like Nails, Full of Hell, like
Oh
those,
wow.
those kind of even a bit of like Black Breath, like that Southern Lord kind of sound. And so it was definitely, I don't want to say heavier than pipe bomb, but more that kind of thrashy vein of things.
Oh okay.
Um, and then my brother at the time had this like pretty busy job schedule, and so he would like help me out with some drums, and it just kind of never really clicked. I was like, well, I'll let him work on that, and in the meantime, I was kind of missing that like metalcore vein of things
Yeah.
because I love writing for church girls, and that's been super cool. That's sort of like a whole other side of what I normally write.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, man, it'd be nice to just sort of do some like early 2000s metalcore stuff. And so initially that's where Pipe Bomb started out, was that sort of like I haven't heard anything that sounds like Norma Jean. Even Norma Jean doesn't sound like old Norma
No.
Jean. So I
Good
was
point.
like, how can I kind of bring that sound? And there's other bands sort of doing that. Like I think even like Knocked Loose
Yeah,
kind
they
of
have
has that
a little
like,
bit.
yeah, like that Earth Crisis meets like, you know, those Panic chords from the early 2000s.
Mhm.
And Sanction's another band that kind of did that thing, but I was like, man, how do I get that sound? And it's just started off as like well, I don't know, maybe I'll just try it myself and see what happens. And so, yeah, so False God was the first one that I did, and it didn't take too long to write. Like it was kind of based on a lot of other demos that I had, and to be honest, I didn't really like overthink it. I was just like, here's a song, a lot of that was just to see if I could do it. And
I love that.
uh, initially, like, the drum samples I was using were like Logic's built-in, like the heavy kit in Logic's
They're kind of crappy
thing,
too.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and like,
It's something.
for the price, I was like, hey, this isn't bad. Like I learned to EQ them and stuff like that, but um, it didn't really, it wasn't up to what I wanted it to be. But for the moment, I was like, whatever. Like no one's going to listen to this anyway. I kind of had that mentality of like, you know, I've been out of the heavy scene a long time. Like no one's going to listen to this. And so I know nothing about mixing, by the way. Like all of the stuff that I've done for Pipe Bomb has just sort of been on the fly. Again,
Really?
my brother went to school for like audio engineering, and that was part of his job for a while, so he knows a lot more about that than I do. And he's helped me with things here and there, but everything else is just like YouTube tutorials and asking friends who are producers. Like I'll send them mixes and just be like, does this sound like crap? Like, is this okay?
Yeah.
So they've been a huge help. But yeah, so the first single, False God, I was like, I'll just put it out and see what happens. So I put it out, and
Well,
I'm not totally sure how it happened, but I'm pretty sure my friend Brett, who plays in Plead the Widow's Cause, he sent it to Kingdom Core, and Sean on Kingdom Core shared it from his page, and like overnight, I got like 1,000 followers, and I was like, how crazy
okay.
is that, So
I think
yeah,
that's
I
what it
mean,
was. I think that's what it was
yeah,
because Brett is in a is on a messenger group that I'm a part of, and I think he said something about pipe bomb, and I think that might have been where it came from, and then it just seemed like yeah, it was like instant, and all of a sudden just people were reposting and putting on their timeline, and it was just like holy crap, this blew up. I want to say that when I finally gave it a listen, you caught. I mean, because what I heard I was like, he's totally caught the early 2000s hardcore, like that whole hardcore metal scene. That was because it made me think of, yes, it made me think of Norma Jean, Chariot kind of a feel. It was just who's like you said, it was kind of like who's really doing this now, and at least it's definitely not in the spotlight as a lot of new metal is, and I think that was great because even like your yelling is very, I think, different than a lot of stuff that is out now as well. So I know it just like I listen to you and I feel like I got to clear my throat. So I mean that's the good kind of yelling.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't really know what I'm doing. That I still, after recording vocals all day, like I'll just have no voice, and I'm like, I hope that's fine. Um,
Dang, dude.
but yeah, I mean, back in the day when I was doing vocals like that for my old band, Despite My Pride, um, we never did like big tours or anything, but we did a couple weekenders. And by the end of the weekend, my voice would be shot because I think I knew a lot less about taking care of my voice then.
Mhm.
Um, and then with Church Girls, I don't really have any like super screamy parts, but I do have some background vocals with screams in them.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like I've gotten better at learning how to take care of my voice on the road. Because if you listen to our new song, Death Wish, it's kind of buried in the mix a little bit, but it's sort of a screaming outro that fades out.
Okay.
And, doing that every night, it's quiet in the mix, but when I do it live, it's very loud. And so I feel like doing that every night, I had to mentally prepare myself of like, okay, I'm shifting into like metalcore mode, like I gotta be sure to take care of things. Um,
So is that off
so
of the I think it's called what Nightmare Nights? Is that off of that
yeah,
one? Okay, okay.
yeah, that's the last track on that EP. I mean, I'm glad you said that I correctly captured the early 2000s thing because that'd be so terrible if I was like, yeah, I was shooting for that, and then it just sounded like generic metalcore or
Yeah,
something.
you mean it sucks, man. You sound like a guy who's trying too hard. No, but here's another thing too. I want to compliment you on is that when I listened to the whole album for the first time when it finally was released, um, Stomp, right? Uh, it was I listened to it. And, okay, I didn't know who your influences were yet, but I'm like, It's definitely got to be Chariot. Definitely got to be Norma Jean. I said I there was parts where it sounded like hints of He Is Legend, and
Mm,
a little bit of like Dillinger Escape Plan. Um, but I'm like, I'm sure I'm missing a lot. But then I realized when I went to your Spotify and I saw you had your own Spotify playlist of influences, I'm like, let's see. So I clicked on it and I'm like, oh yeah, there you go, there you go. Yeah, I was right, I was right. And it's like, oh yeah. It's like some other like the Bled and
yeah.
and a bunch of other stuff. But man, I was just like, you I can hear all this. Does that make sense? Like I could hear not them, but I can hear the influence in what you
Mhm.
brought out. And you know what? Honestly, I kind of I know songs are kind of thrown away like candy nowadays, and EPs are kind of too. But I honestly was like, I wanted a little bit, I wanted a couple more songs, you know, because it was good. By the time it was over and it went back to song one again, I'm like, that was it. I need a little bit more,
Yeah. I
but it
mean, they're
was
pretty
really
quick
good.
too. They're
Huh?
quick songs. Like,
They are, yes.
um, I think the whole EP is like 15, maybe 15 minutes. Um, and I think maybe a little of that I got from like bands like Nails. I mean, they're sort of like false grind, like grindcore adjacent. But I mean, they'll have songs that are a minute long, and I'm like, that's all you need, if it's a good
Yeah.
song, if it's a good song. But yeah, I get what you mean. I
Um,
ideally I would have liked to have had, you know, maybe, I mean, it would have been nice to do a full length. Um, but I knew that if I decided to do a full length, I was like, that's it's going to take a year, it's going to take forever
yes.
to
Yeah.
put something like that out. Um,
But
and also,
what a way to introduce yourself though, honestly. And your talents aside from Church Girls. Because I mean, there's obviously a lot more melodic, a lot more like poppy kind of a feel, and doing some fancy stuff, which is absolutely commendable and wonderful. And it's again, it's a great listen. If any of you guys haven't checked out Church Girls, check them out as well. But but then yeah, to go into to Pipe Bomb, it really shows like again like a different side of your talents of just the complicated craziness and chaoticness of of metal, of that kind of metal. And I hate, it's a problem, I don't know genre titles very well, but I'm just gonna say metal, okay.
yeah, yeah,
But that kind though, you captured it and you did it well. You weren't this guy who's sloppy. It wasn't anything that sounded generic like you were, you thought it might sound at all. It was very, you hit it, and like you said, you just kind of go in there, you say what you got to say, you break the sweat, and then you're on to the next one, and it's just like, wow.
thanks, man. Yeah, I just finished um, mixing and mastering a new song, and I think it came out to like 3 minutes, maybe three and a half. And
Oh,
in my
oh,
head,
so
I was like,
too long. I got you.
yeah, I was like, that's pretty long. I don't know. Um, and it's, yeah, I showed it to one of my friends who's also, like around the same age as me, grew up in the same sort of early 2000s hardcore and metalcore thing. And he was giving me constructive feedback and saying like, I don't know, something feels weird around like the 2.5 minute mark. I guess I'm just not used to your songs being this long. And I was like, yeah, like I just never want anything to feel like, okay, I'm ready for this to be done. Like I'd rather
Yeah,
leave people feel like I wish there was more, and then boom, there's
press
the next
repeat.
track.
Yeah, or press
Yeah.
repeat, at the most
Yeah.
or the least. But I like that you did it a little bit longer. And I don't know, do you feel like you're going to edit it, or do you think it's good the way it is?
I think I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. I think sort of the whole like ethos for this project, I mean, it was born out of like me having spare time. And oh, sorry, I forgot to mention this. Like when I made the first pipe bomb song, I just got let go from my job. And so I was just job searching and I had nothing else to do. And I was like, okay, spend X amount of time searching for jobs, spend X amount of time writing riffs. And I would just write riffs the whole rest of the time.
Dang.
And then part of it was just sort of to keep myself sane. But then I was like, man, it seems like a shame to not like use any of it and put it out anywhere. So,
Yeah.
um, and so I think the whole ethos behind it was like, just kind of do it. Like if I spend too long thinking about it, Like especially in the mixing and mastering phase, like I feel like I can get into this like perfectionist mindset.
Oh
And part
yeah.
of that is necessary, but another part of it is like at a certain point I just need to be like, all right, it's done and I got to put it out because otherwise it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so for this new song, I kind of hit that point where I was like, I've hit the limits of my mixing skills. I've hit the limits of my mastering skills. And if I try to go rework the song a billion times, I feel like it's just never gonna reach the point where I really want it to be.
Yeah.
So, and I think especially with, I mean, it's 2024. A lot of people are very focused on releasing singles, and I get, I that's pretty much what I've been doing is put a couple singles out and then put an EP out. Um, Partially because I feel like that's what works for keeping people's attention, and then partially because I think that's the capacity that I have for songwriting right now is I don't want to spend 2 years making an album. I'd rather put out a single every couple months or every 6 months or something. I guess my mindset is like, I'm going to do the best I can with the single. If I release it and then people are like, wow, this mix sucks or something, then I'll remix it later.
Oh,
I'm
that's true. Yeah.
that's what I did with Stomp. So the three singles I released before Stomp, I wasn't super happy with the mix.
Oh, okay.
And so I actually went back and re-recorded a lot of things. Like I re-recorded the bass, I redid the drums, and I remixed um, False God, Suicide Pact, and Tied Down. I remixed all of them and then mastered them with the other songs for the EP.
Well, let me ask you real quick. With that, was it because you were unhappy with the mix, or was it because someone said something to you?
Kind of both.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not like a audio engineering guy. I just noticed that my songs were sounding quieter on Spotify than some other songs, and I think that was partially like a gain staging issue. And I just didn't really know much about levels, so I was like,
Yeah.
"Cool, I'm gonna put everything at zero, or I'm just gonna make it so it sounds good and just put it out." And people would say, like, I would ask people for feedback, and sometimes people would be like, "Ah, it feels a little bit muddy," or maybe boost this, do that. So because it was a learning process, the more I learned, the more I was like, I think I can make it sound a little better.
Yeah.
And,
That's really smart, by the way.
even
Like
thanks.
to do it and then to kind of see it, the response or whatnot, and then kind of like, okay, yeah, I probably, especially for people that really know, sound engineering and have that ear.
Thanks. Yeah.
No, I think it's a great idea.
But I probably wouldn't have like re-released it as like a remix or something. But I think because I was including those songs on an EP, I was like, I might as well spend some time and get it to where all the songs sound a little bit more uniform. But yeah, I mean, even listening to the mix of the new song that I just did, I feel like it's better than the mixes on Stomp. So hopefully I'll keep progressing. Like, I mean, I'd like to learn more, but again, I feel like that's just sort of out of necessity. Like, I don't really have the money and time, or at least not, I don't want to. I have a lot of other responsibilities now that I'm like in my 30s. So I don't want to devote a lot of time and money towards booking studio time because it's always sort of been like a DIY thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I kind of like recording myself and mixing and mastering myself. So we'll see. That may change in the future. I mean, hopefully it will change in the future because mixing makes me go like insane. But um,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, I I would probably want like some form of we'd have to reach the point where that it made sense to do that. So
Well, then, so okay, so then with that, I'm assuming then you are probably not, you like the comfortability and stuff of recording, so you probably don't have, I don't know, maybe you do, is the idea to play these songs live?
I've been thinking about that. I think part of it comes down to finding the right people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
My my brother would be a great fit on drums since he kind of helped me with a lot of these drum parts.
Mhm.
And he's a big fan of like Dillinger and Every Time I Die. And so I feel like he really nails that style. And then I have another friend who offered to play bass. I have several friends who offered to play bass. and I considered possibly trying to do guitar and vocals at the same time, but I feel like that's not going to be possible. Um, at least not to the standard that I want it to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so we'll see. I've kind of been in the process of thinking about putting a live show together. We'll see how it goes. I feel like I've spent the last like 10 years being in local bands and playing a lot of local shows at bars and clubs and stuff. And I think that can get really exhausting. So my mindset with this was to try to put together more of an online presence before I started doing local shows.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, you've definitely
and
got quite the response.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've been really surprised to be honest. Like, I think Christian music in general has reached kind of a weird point where I feel like it's all gravitating toward like CCM or I guess more like a straightforward metalcore sound or like a modern metalcore sound.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I just wasn't really expecting anyone to be into this because I was thinking like our breed died out a long time ago, you know, like this there's no one left who's still like, you know, I want to listen to like early Every Time I Die records and stuff.
You kidding me?
Um,
Nostalgia is in, man.
I guess so, man. That's like the I forget the name of that festival, but that like I was thinking of the when we were young or when you were young fest
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was basically like all the old emo bands. Um, but yeah, so I've been really pleasantly surprised, and Sean at Kingdom Core has been like super supportive. Like I honestly think that if if people like Brett and Sean didn't share Pipe Bomb around, I probably would have like moved on to something else or just I don't know. Like
Well,
I think the response that people gave was like, oh, maybe there's something here and I should keep
yeah.
doing this, you know?
Do you think you can? Because that's a that's a lot of yelling. That's a lot of
Yeah.
Stomp has sort of a similar, obviously a very similar sound with the songs. Now, are you kind of getting a different kind of sound for this sort of next chunk of songs?
I think this song in particular is going to be pretty similar.
Okay.
Um, I mixed a little bit differently this time, and I think it sounds a bit better. So hopefully it'll sound like the same sort of thing, but better. Moving forward, I've been kind of trying to incorporate more, I guess, artsy dissonance. Hopefully that doesn't sound too pretentious, but um, I think
there's
like
someone that just turned off. Like, okay, never screw this. Just kidding. Sorry.
but yeah, I mean, I've been listening to a lot of like Daughters, um, and then like Norma Jean, Oh God, the Aftermath, which that's a tuning that I use all the time. I think they do drop C sharp, but I basically do drop D, and then it's like the highest two strings, which would be B and E. Um, I just do B and C, so you get that semitone sort of panic chord thing just by
Oh,
strumming the top two strings.
nice.
But yeah, I feel like Daughters more specifically more than Norma Jean, but they kind of have this like very odd pitch shifting. Like I saw them one time in LA, and when they sound checked their guitars, it just sounded like a saw. Like it was ridiculous. And somehow, you know, it sounds so ugly and dissonant, and then they start playing and it just works. Like it's got this weird sense of melody. And so, you know, I'm not trying to rip them off or anything, but I think that's something that I'd like to incorporate into my songs too,
Yeah.
is more of that, I guess specifically guitar dissonance. Um, and then I think it'd be nice to incorporate some more like odd time signature stuff. That's not something I'm super well versed in.
Hmm.
Um, but bands like the Dillinger Escape Plan, it's, following along to their songs is just like almost impossible. I can't even tell you how many times I've listened to like 43% Burnt and just tried to follow it. Like, the intro riff, you're like, okay, I got this. And then it'll go into the first riff and you're like,
Nope,
nope.
lost me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'd like to sort of split the difference and kind of have like
yeah,
certain sections where it's like, whoa, this is a little much, and then you pull it back, and that
yes,
makes the more straightforward sections feel even more like on the nose. So, eventually I think that's more the vein I'm trying to move into. I guess like less breakdowns, more like ugly riffs
no,
is,
but I like
a
that. That's
simple way to put
cool.
it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's good.
I mean, Converge is one of those bands that like I can't think of a single song that has like a breakdown section, but they have a ton of like thrashy riffs, and then they'll kind of train. It'll move into this sort of slow, almost doomy kind of riff.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and to me, that accomplishes the same feeling without relying on a cliche to get that.
yeah.
Um,
Girls, I'm backing up a little bit. With church girls, it's you're are you so are you a Christian in a just a regular band, or is it a church girls a Christian band? And then like how is that in regards to what made you decide to do a Christian metal or metalcore album? You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
I could have worded that so
So
much better.
nah, it's all good. So yeah, sorry, Church Girls is not a Christian band. I'm just me in
Mhm.
Church Girls.
Okay.
Um, and that was kind of refreshing too, to not be sort of roped into any sort of label, I guess.
Yes, yes.
Um, but when I decided to do sort of my own thing, I didn't necessarily choose to make it like, oh, this is going to be a Christian metalcore band. But Pipe Bomb is just me. And so, like, I think that sort of naturally happened. And I think just in terms of subject matter, you know, I feel like if you're metalcore relies on a strong sense of emotion for lyrics. And so I feel like you have to take from, one of several wells. You can either go down to like, I'm angry politically, or I'm angry existentially, or I'm angry with like a righteous anger. I'm dealing with those kind of, things. Or I'm angry at the government or whatever. I feel like you have to take from certain things. I don't know many people that would write a metalcore song that's like a love song, although I'm sure it's possible. But um, it's aggressive music has aggressive subject matter.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I was digging for that, I was like, it made more sense for me to make it a Christian project because, well, one, I feel like there's not that sort of Renaissance era of Christian metalcore that I grew up with in like the early 2000s doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, there are still Christian metal bands, but it's not the same. We're not getting these heavy hitters like, I mean, August Burns Red's still around.
True, true.
Under Earth is still around, but
But even
they've
that
sort of moved just away from that.
yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it's not the same as it was before. And the bands also sound a lot different. So I was almost like you said, like a nostalgia sort of thing. I was like, well, I kind of want to bring that back. I want Christian metal to be kind of cool and artsy and obscure, and I think people can smell something that's ingenuine from a mile away.
Oh,
So
heck yeah, heck yeah.
especially in, I think that's part of what bothers me about a lot of CCM music is it's just a little too polished or something. There's
Yeah.
some sort of disconnect where I'm like, I'm not getting the same, you know, I can't argue with the message. I can't argue with them wanting to make Christian music more accessible, but um, I think there's something gets lost.
Yeah.
And so, um, when I listen to, I mean, the Chariots, one of my favorite bands. Um, and I think writing there, like Josh is great at one-liners,
Yes.
and I feel like his lyrics are a little bit more artsy and cryptic than some of the spirit-filled hardcore bands that you were talking about. Um, and then I compared that with someone like Keith Buckley from Every Time I Die, who his lyrics are equally artsy, but then surprisingly straightforward too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that he's great at writing a line that'll just cut super hard.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of been my influence just lyrically. It's like, all right, I want to balance between, I don't want everything to be on this literal level. I want to blend these sort of poetic elements and make it to where it feels like an art form. It doesn't just feel like I'm mad and here's some words about it.
Or
But
being preachy. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I feel like that's the other end of the spectrum. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, I feel like you get more into the, not to throw For Today under the bus, but I feel like you get more into the For Today side that's very just like straight ahead. This is preaching in a song,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Um, and so I wanted to be, more on the side of something that felt like poetry, or it felt like you kind of had to work to work it out
Figured
and
out. Yep.
feel like there's layers here, um, which is I think partially caused a little bit of confusion. I think especially with False God, because there's a nun on the cover. And I know when it first came out, there are a lot of people like, "Are you anti-Catholic?" It's like, not really. I thought the photo looked kind of scary.
Did you also get flack for saying bastards? Because
Not that I know of, actually.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got crap for that too.
No, no, no one's picked up their pitchfork for that one yet. Um, but yeah, there were quite a few people who were like, "Are you anti-Catholic?" And I had to be like, "No." Um, but
Oh,
yeah,
the
I
internet.
think yeah, yeah, it's a whole world. Um, but yeah, I think in terms of with lyric writing, I kind of have to do the same thing where I don't want to overthink it. I don't want to spend forever writing them. So there are some songs where I'm not as happy with how the lyrics turned out. I think Suicide Pact is one like that for me. There's a lot of repetition. It doesn't hit quite as hard as I wanted it to, but it
Yeah.
felt, it's kind of like a song as a moment in time. And I wasn't trying to drag that out or make it like absolutely perfect. I was like, this gets the point across and this is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I like
but
that,
yeah,
man.
a lot of those spirit-filled hardcore bands, I kind of admire their on the nose lyrics and hardcore in general. I feel like if you're looking for poetic lyrics, most of the time hardcore is not the place where you're going to find
No.
that. You're going to find super just straight ahead stuff, um and that's cool. So there's a little bit of that I want to get, and then the rest I'm like, okay, I'm gonna dial it back a little.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you, man. I like it. That's great. What uh it's a two-parter. What was like the best live show you've been to? As far as whether it be personal or a huge show, and then what is the worst concert experience you've had?
Man. All right. So several things come to mind. I'll start with best shows because I feel like that's easier. I I mean I was lucky enough to see the Chariot probably 4 or 5 times.
Nice.
Um, and so they played on their farewell tour, they played at the Trocadero in Philly, which the Trocadero is no longer functioning as a venue. I think
Oh,
they're either turning it into condos or something. Um, but that show was amazing. It was full unhinged Chariot energy.
yes.
Um, and I guess in that similar vein, they also played another venue that no longer exists called Hangar 84 um,
Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah.
in New Jersey, and it was sort of, I think at the time they were on tour with Under Oath. It was like them, Comeback Kid, another band I can't quite remember, and Under Oath,
Wow.
and everyone except Under Oath played at this show. Um, so it was
Oh.
a lot smaller, and yeah, I remember Brandon smashed his guitar at that show and was like upset about it. He was like, I shouldn't have done that. I only had one guitar. Um,
I relate.
yeah. So that one was great. And also, I'll give two more honorary mentions. I saw the Dillinger Escape Plan when I lived in LA, and um, the singer, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he drank a bottle of something and took out a lighter and blew flames, and it went up into like
Oh
the
no.
lights above the stage. And I was like, they're gonna pull the plug. They're gonna like something's gonna catch on fire. And surprisingly, everything was fine. Like it was great. Um, and I got the mic for a song on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was excited. I got the mic for Limerent Death, and so I was really stoked on that one. Um, and at that same venue, I saw Daughters like a couple of years later, and that was a different vibe. It was chaotic, but in this weird like noise rock way, and not in a metal way.
Okay.
Um,
I need to
but yeah,
give
that
them a
was a really
listen.
fun show.
I've never heard of them,
Yeah,
so I'll definitely give them a listen.
yeah, they're an acquired taste. I feel like, if especially if you listen to like old Daughters albums, they're more they definitely evolved over time. They used to be almost like a grind like I think of like the Locust when I think of their earlier stuff.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
but yeah, their newer stuff is just as weird, but in a more palatable way.
I like
Um,
that.
but I like them a lot just because of their guitars.
Hmm,
Yeah, they're really, really tasteful, dissonant guitar parts. But yeah, so
yeah.
that's the best. The worst was probably there's two shows I'm thinking of. Both of them are ones that I've played. So um, one of them was with my the band that I was in back in college. Despite my pride, we did like a little weekender tour. And this was before I knew anything about booking shows. So we were like, yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll be back for school on Monday.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and so we went to, it was essentially like a Pennsylvania tour. Like we did Erie, Pennsylvania. We did a show in a barn that Saturday. And then Sunday, we played in Easton, Pennsylvania, which is like a nice town, but we got thrown on to this existing show and they were like, okay, you can play after the headliner.
What?
And so we were like, okay, that's fine, And but it got pushed back really late. And so I think we played it like which Sunday show is like unless it's a big show. If it's a local show, Sunday shows are the worst. So I think we played at like midnight and there were two people watching us. And I was like, like we were tired, we were ready to go. And so I think we played like three songs, maybe four. and we were out. Um, but one silver lining is the sound guy was like, "You guys were actually like pretty cool. You remind me of Dead Guy," and I was like,
I'll
"Nice.
take that. Yeah.
That's a big compliment." Yeah. Um, so that's one.
It sounds weird, but I kind of miss those shows. And in fact, my one of the bands I'm in, the Filthy Kids, we just had one at the Boardwalk I think a month or two ago, and we played. I think it was like on not Mother's Day. It was like some holiday. I forgot what holiday it was, and there was like maybe 5 people, maybe a little more than that. But I kind of like that because then it's like this. I don't know. There's something intimate about it too. That I'm playing for you.
Yeah.
You're here. It's just us and you. You're gonna get it. We're
Yeah.
playing. We're giving our all just for you. So I like that kind of thing. But I get that though.
Yeah.
I get that when you're young and you're kind of like, where's the crowd, man?
Well, I think also the two people that were watching us were in one of the other bands. So
Oh, there you
like
go.
the crowd didn't exist. Like there was no crowd.
It was bands playing for bands. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, kudos to those guys. That, I would midnight on a Sunday and they were still watching some random band they've never heard of. Like I was still thankful. But yeah, it was rough. Um, and then one of them was with Church Girls, where we played in Boise, Idaho, and my friend is from Boise, and his parents live in Boise, and so I invited them out to the show, and they are super nice, just like the best people, and nice older Christian couple, and we knew nothing about the bands that were opening up for us on this tour. It was very like DIY. And
Oh
the
boy.
band that opened up for us, like, got super drunk and was like yelling obscenities and like disgusting thing, like just really gross stuff into the mic. And I had so much secondhand embarrassment from my friend's parents, who were nice. Like they took me out to dinner. They were talking to me. They were so nice. And then they sat through this band just to watch, us play. And it was, man, it was rough getting through that. I apologize like a billion times. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know these bands. Um, yeah, it's like imagine if you were like, "Hey, mom, we're gonna go see, Casting Crowns," and then opening up for them was like Insane Clown Posse or something.
Yeah,
Like
right.
it's ridiculous. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
those
pretty
were
bad.
yeah.
Okay.
If I think about it, I still cringe so hard.
Along those lines, actually, I want to say who were you surprised to see blow your like who blew your mind, like you were unexpectedly surprised that you saw live, like their performance or how they sounded, whatever it was.
Yeah. So on the Dillinger Escape Plan's farewell tour, Cult Leader opened up for them, and this band called Oh Brother opened up for them.
Hmm.
And I think Oh Brother played, I can't remember when they played in like the list of bands, but I remember I was like, Dillinger Escape Plan, it's gonna be like, very heavy stuff. And then Oh Brother came out and they just had like Telecasters, and like they're kind of sludgy, doomy rock with like very beautiful melodies. Like his voice is incredible. And so they
Oh,
just played, and I was like, no one was moshing, everyone was just staring, and I was like, this is great.
dude.
And just the yeah, really great guitar tones, and they sounded heavy, even though they had Telecasters. It was like, everything really filled out, and
Nice.
um, yeah, I just remember sitting there and being like, this is not at all what I thought was going to happen at this show, but it was really, really great. And I think whenever you go to a show and it's like sort of mixed genre, that can happen, where you're just like, someone's a lot lighter than you expected.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is pretty great, actually.
silly questions. But all right, pizza or burger
Hmm.
or neither?
I'm gonna say burger. I feel like a
Burger.
burger is healthier and will keep me fuller longer.
Okay, fair enough. Um, books or movies?
Movies,
Movies. You're not
100%.
a reader,
Yeah.
huh?
No.
I took you for a reader. Oh, okay.
Uh, I mean, I have read things, but I I feel like in my adult years, I don't really read as much as I should. Um,
Oh.
but yeah.
Okay, so then, all right. So name me one of your favorite directors and one of your favorite movies or series.
Um,
If you
I
say
don't know much
Star
about
Wars, if you say Star Wars, I'm turning off the mic.
I don't know much about directors. Whoever directed Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I remember thinking that he was very interesting style, and I liked that. Um,
Oh, it's been a long time. I know who that is too. Dang it.
Favorite movies. I mean, this is cliche, but Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Um, yeah,
I'm just glad it wasn't
and
Star Wars. Sorry.
I think in terms of like things that I've watched recently, I saw The Way Back, and I remember really liking that movie. Steve Carell's in it,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay. I
yeah,
remember seeing that one. That was a very
yeah,
good
it's
movie. I
nice.
like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of anything I watched on a plane recently. I think last time I had a long flight and I just watched like a lot of the John Wick movies, and by the end, my brain was just like, I can't handle any more gunshot noises. Like it's almost putting me to sleep.
Okay, so 2000s hardcore metal scene or the modern metal scene?
Um,
What do you tend to listen to more or prefer?
Man, I'm gonna go 2000. I mean, if we mean 2000s up to 2010, I would say
Okay,
that.
yeah. Okay.
Um, because I feel like I didn't hit it quite as early as a lot of other people.
Okay.
Um, like when did Bless the Martyr? Was that like 2007,
I
2005,
thought it was,
something like
yeah, I think it's earlier like that. I think
yeah.
that sounds
I
right.
think a lot of stuff in that era. Um,
That's
I
pretty
mean,
golden.
even stuff like Messengers from August Burns Red, that's 2007, and that's like perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's not even the style I gravitate towards. I just think they nailed it. Like they did one album, and it's like that's the style. They kept doing
Yeah.
that. Um, but yeah, I'd say early 2000s.
Coffee or tea?
Tea. I
Tea?
don't drink coffee. I feel like I would be way too jittery.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, if I do energy drinks, I just start sweating and I'm like, you know,
Oof.
can't do it.
Yeah. Okay. I know you're tatted up too. What was the most sensitive? Like, okay, two. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Again, it's very. I ask questions. I talkie. Um, what was the most painful tattoo you got, and what's the most meaningful tattoo?
Um, pro Probably the most painful one was my chest. I got God is love on my chest, which that was the first one I did. It's a bit cliche, but it is true. I think anything in this, I also wasn't used to tattoos then. It was my first one, you know,
That's a heck
anytime
of a
you
way to
hit,
go.
yeah. I mean, I was bold because I was stupid and I didn't know what to expect.
Gosh.
But it hits certain parts and then your whole head would vibrate, and I wasn't a fan of that. And I
Oof.
guess anything around the wrists, once it gets to like this point, it starts to kind of really not a fan of that. And then
How
the thighs.
how was it for here though? Did this hurt bother you at all?
Um, I don't have anything. Well, I guess
Oh, I
yeah.
thought you
This
did. I'm
one,
sorry.
this one is like.
Oh, kind of.
Sorry, I don't know if this
Oh yeah, you got it right
this one
there.
is like right in there. Yeah, that one, but it's not like a solid. It's not like you're just packing stuff in there. So
Oh,
I
okay.
feel like it was okay. It wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't bad.
But the thigh,
Um,
huh?
yeah, thighs I hate. And I guess the most meaningful one, it feels weird to not pick a Christian tattoo is my most meaningful one.
No, there's
But
nothing wrong with that.
um, but I think in terms of one that's most meaningful as a tattoo,
Hmm.
I have I'm straight edge, and so I have an X on my leg, and I think that was sort of like a definitive like I'm not going back on this. Like it's like
Wow, I like
it's
that.
on my leg now.
Yeah,
Um, and I didn't want to be one of those guys that was like, I'm straight edge, and then 5 years later you're like, oh well, it was just sort of a phase. It's like, well, you still have the tattoo on you, so
yeah.
um, so yeah, I mean, for me, it was like it's like, yeah, this is like a life. This is a life thing.
All right,
To be
and
honest,
then
most of them don't have much of a meaning. They're just like, oh, that looks cool. So I'm
yeah,
gonna do
I had a lot of those, unfortunately. Um,
it.
uh, okay, so two more questions. This is it, I promise. All right, so you're going for a long drive. What are you bringing with you? Like, what do you kind of listen to a song, like an album, all the way through? Do you have a couple albums to listen all the way through, or do you just kind of like random? Like, who are you definitely listening to, though? I know it's a couple questions in one, but
Long drive, I probably won't listen to much that's heavy. Peripheral Vision by Turnover is like 100%. I'll listen to that. Every single flight I've ever been on, I think I listened to Peripheral Vision the whole way through.
I'll
Um,
have to check that out too. Okay.
yeah, they hit gold with that one. If I have more time, I think I'll probably listen to something from Pine Grove.
Man, never heard of some of these
Probably
people.
Skylight is great, great album. They're from New Jersey too, I believe. Yeah, sort of country twangy, subtly,
Yeah,
but with more of like a folky indie, bordering on like emo even. Um,
I like that. Okay.
but yeah, they're super, super good. And then like I'll probably listen to something from the National. Um,
There you go.
something it can be a little mumbly, but I think it's it's like thinking music. So I
Yeah,
think that's why I put it on.
nice. I like that. Good answers. I like those. Wasn't expecting that. Okay. All right, man. So here's the last question I tried to ask all my guests now. Is so what album or albums um were where you wish you were the fly on the wall? Like you wish you were sitting down watching them record.
Man, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I don't even know which album in particular, but something by, I mean, probably um, Master Puppets by Metallica. Just something by Metallica.
Wow. Oh,
I feel
okay.
like, and that might be not the best answer because I think we all can be the fly on the wall for like that Saint Anger documentary they made. It's like some kind of monster. That's what.
Yes.
So we sort of unintentionally
Got
become the fly on the
this.
wall when we watch that. Um, which is not pleasant. I don't want to
No.
be in that situation. But I feel like it would have been more pleasant back in the back in the 80s, I believe, when Master Puppets was released. So yeah, I don't know. I don't listen to them as much as I used to, but when I first started playing guitar, it was just like 100% Metallica 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And seeing, I don't know. I would love to see Lars drum good. And he's very good on that album, honestly. Like
Yeah.
he's great. So I'd love to see that. Um, I think it's just all of them at their best. So I think seeing them like just nail it in the studio would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. You're the first one to send Metallica, so cool. I like
Oh, all right. Nice.
that. I like that. Yes, dude, Mitchell, thank you so much for your time. This was a blast. I appreciate you taking the time, and I know it's super late over there, so I really do appreciate your time. And man, I good luck on the new stuff. I can't wait to hear the new song, and yeah, and good luck with Church Girls too, because that's really really good. I'm really enjoying that. So, but yeah, thank you again
Thanks,
for coming
man.
on, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.